Hi, everybody. Welcome to Fuel Radio. On the line with me today is Carlo Zarillo. Welcome to Fuel Radio, Carlo.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Rob.
We've just been having a nice conversation here. It's been great to get to know Carlo a little bit. And Carlo is involved with a company called Cascadia Seaweed. He's done a number of different things in terms of marketing and owning businesses. And what was you mentioned it to me before, you had a food business in Chilliwack. Just share with
Yeah,
us a little bit of your background.
yeah, sure. So my last up till October, and for about 3 years prior, I owned a fruit processing facility in Chilliwack. So we made pie fillings and glazes and sauces, mostly ingredients for the baking industry.
Mm,
And a large company in Europe came along and wanted to add to their portfolio. So they bought the company from me and my partners.
oh, cool.
And yeah, so I'm 25 years in consumer products,
Right.
mostly out east and a little bit of time in the US. I cut my teeth with Cadbury chocolates
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah, and was the most popular dad at daycare. And
And at
um,
Halloween.
yeah, yeah, our house always, we were the full, Benita, my wife, also worked at Cadbury. That's where we met.
Oh, yeah.
And we used to give out full size bars on Halloween. So kids kids used to come back 2 and 3 times. Um,
Yeah.
I took on a role with Colgate Palmolive and ended up in Toronto, and then ended up in Montreal,
Mm,
and was running Eastern Canada for Colgate Palmolive, and then did a stint in the U.S. and then was headhunted away, and I joined Kraft Foods, and I did a few senior roles with Kraft Foods, ran a couple of business units, and from there ended up becoming executive VP of North America for Cascades Tissue Group, which is an environmental box board specialty and consumer products, making toilet paper and paper towel and napkins,
okay.
mostly private label. And so I did that. And then in 2010, unfortunately, my mom fell ill. So Benita and I made a decision that we really needed to be out here because our kids, we've moved around so much, our kids never really got a chance to get to know their grandparents.
Mm,
So my parents are here in Coquitlam. They've been here for, geez, I think almost 30 years. And my sister's here as well in Coquitlam. She's been here for sure for 30 years. So we cashed out, so to speak, and we moved out here. And I decided that I would kind of semi-retire. I bought a couple of local businesses. One is Sandpiper Signs,
mhm.
and the other one was Snap Tri-City. So the franchise, it's a franchise, and I owned the franchise for about 5 years before the corporate franchise took it back over. And during that time, I also was CEO and ran a dietary supplement company. So we made mostly plant-based nutrition protein products, and sold them to brand owners who took them to market.
Okay.
And then I took over Sandel Foods, and kind of now sold Sandel Foods, and I'm basically was semi-retired up until the Cascadia opportunity came.
How did you find the corporate world? Like, how did you find working for those big brands in comparison to, you know, the startups and some of the smaller companies that you've worked with
Yeah,
since
yeah,
you moved out here?
yeah, great question. I mean, I've worked in businesses that had zero revenue, and I've run businesses that have multi-billion dollars in revenue,
Yeah.
and kind of everything in between. And I think they're both great. I think what's really really important. So I was lucky enough to do my MBA as well. But one thing you really get from the large companies is it's like taking an MBA.
Mm,
They do such a great job of onboarding, training, development, and really really just focusing on succession planning and getting you ready for the next job.
mm,
So it really gives you a grounding that when you do get into kind of the smaller companies, because a lot of the smaller companies are not very focused,
Right.
and they tend to spread themselves too thin.
And they don't have
Um,
systems,
they don't have
right?
systems, and they
Yeah.
don't have a strategic plan. And
Yeah.
I, part of my MBA was focusing on strategic planning. And again, the large companies do such a great job of using strategic planning as a framework for growth.
Hmm.
And so that's what I'm able to bring to a lot of the small companies that I end up working with, or even mid-sized companies, is lots of times I come in and they'd love to do a strategic plan, but they just have never done one, or they don't
Yeah.
know how to do one. And so I'm able to come in and get them focused, put a strategic plan in place that, really a strategic plan does two things. It sets the vision of the company. So kind of where are you going? So it sets the goalpost of what the future looks like. But more importantly, the real important work is setting the core values. Under what core values are you establishing the company, and how are you going to operate, and how are you going to act, and because when you hire employees, you hire employees for fit, and you really want them to fit your core values. And so I would say some of the most important work when you do strategic planning is around core values. So I learned a lot of that from the large companies.
Excellent. I like what you're saying. And we could talk about that just for
Yeah, yeah,
a
happy to
long
do
period of time.
that.
Yeah. I know my experience in a couple of the companies that I've worked with, and the last one in particular, just having a strategic plan made such a difference, and the CEO at the time made a big decision because we were so spread out, and we were doing something that was in the public. It was for a nonprofit, but
Right,
we did have a strategic plan, and it was a social enterprise. And so there was one area or a couple areas actually of the organization that were great. Donors loved it. But it wasn't what we were really all about and wanted to be all about.
right.
And so, yeah, I really admired him for making a gutsy decision. We went out for a walk one day, and he said, I was doing marketing and fundraising, and he said, we're gonna do this. Like, we're gonna focus in on this one area. And it was, yeah, I really admired him for doing that. And then it made my job so much easier as a fundraiser because um, even though those other areas were interesting and donors loved it, um, it just helped me to just focus in on the one
Absolutely.
thing, and then we could find people that was they valued that as well, and it really worked. Like, yeah,
Absolutely. Have you
yeah,
read the book Good to Great?
absolutely. I was thinking about
Yeah.
it as you were talking. I
So
didn't.
yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, again, it's a foundational book. I think if people really understand that whole hedgehog process, which is
yeah,
identifying what you can be the best in the world at,
yeah.
and really focusing on that, and that's how you create you know, uh, game changing, like a moat, as Bill Gates and different people say, creating a moat around your business that is really hard to repeat. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, I really admire. When I got here, I joined some of the local not-for-profits. So I was a board director for Share for 6 years,
Oh, yeah.
and I was also a board director for the Tri-City Chamber, and was chair for the Tri-City Chambers. And one of the things I did do for the Tri-City Chambers was take them through a strategic planning process when I was chair. And
Hmm.
I guess one of the most things I'm proud about in my time is that they're still living that document and working to keep it alive, which is great.
Great. Yeah, that's great. I think a lot of times they end up in the drawer somewhere,
Yeah,
the file,
that's
right?
they really do, and
Yeah.
yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah. Okay, we got to talk about seaweed.
Yeah,
That's great, though. Thank you for sharing that. I love that stuff. And
right on.
and Good to Great was one of my favorite books, and that CEO as well. We actually went on a retreat and worked on some of the things that were in the book. Our BHAG, our big hairy
Yeah,
audacious
right
goal,
on.
and
Yeah,
all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
right on.
yeah.
Well, another book, just quickly before we segue, but another great book is changed my life. Actually, changed how I not only how I worked, but how I lived and how I went into relationships. It's called The Speed of Trust.
Oh, yeah.
So it was,
I've
yeah.
I've got it. I've never quite worked my
Okay.
way through the whole book, but I love the concept. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, really, really good.
Okay, I'll pull that out again.
Yeah.
I love. I mean, I'm a big fan of.
Everybody has that book that everyone has that book that they think changed their life kind of thing. So
Yeah,
that one did it for me.
I've heard several people mention it, and I actually have it. I probably could
Yeah,
have it
yeah.
somewhere right here to the right of me on my bookshelf somewhere.
Well, Stephen Covey, the father, did such a great job with Seven Habits of
Oh yeah,
Highly Successful People.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I talk about him all the time, and I'm reminded of his concepts as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right on.
Seek first to understand. That's the one that comes
Yeah,
up all the time.
there you go.
Yeah. One of his 8 principles. So yeah, Cascadia Seaweed. Maybe you could just introduce us to the company. I'll just mention this really quickly. Is earlier this year, I just had this inkling that, you know what, I want to do stuff. I want to be the person. I just felt this drawing to be kinder to the planet. I know it sounds a little bit hippie-ish or woo-woo or whatever, but I just felt like it's something I really wanted to do. And so when I saw Cascadia Seaweed come up, and I've tried to on FuelRadio talk to people that are doing things that are good for the planet. It just has such a it seems to have such a good mix of things that I like, and the things that you've told me about so far as we're preparing for this interview. But anyways, yeah, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit of the story and how Cascadia Seaweed got started, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'll try to do it quickly in an hour and a half. Um, so it is amazing. I mean, it actually got me out of retirement. I thought I was
Mm,
actually, I have a daughter that lives in Scotland, and we have we love traveling, and Benita and I started to actually travel quite a bit before COVID hit. And then when COVID hit, interestingly enough, there was not much to do, and it was kind of boring at home. And luckily, a good friend of mine, a contact that I've known for 10 years, his name's Rob Napoli. So Rob comes from the financial background. He actually financed one of my companies in the past. And Rob also had financed the founder of Cascadia Seaweed, Bill. His name is Bill Collins, and and Rob had financed one of his companies in the past. So Rob knew him, and Rob knew myself. So what happened was, so they had reached out to Rob just to introduce him to Cascadia Seaweed and talk a little bit about the fact that they may be doing a friends and family round of financing, or they may be in the market looking for some financing. So when Rob met them, he was blown away by what they were attempting to do. But what quickly came to light was, growing seaweed, making ingredients, and selling those ingredients to people to put in their products. Yeah, that's good, but it's not great, right? And one of the things, to make a great company, Rob talked to them about how they really need to get into their own branded products. That they had just a superfood that they were working with,
mhm.
and they had an opportunity to bring that to market directly and go right business to consumer
Can I
versus.
stop you with a question there just for a
Yeah,
sec? So
yeah,
just
sure.
what I've gleaned a little bit from talking to you and talking to Desiree Dupuis is that they're looking for, so Cascadia Seaweed's just going to kind of be an umbrella company, and you may come up with a different name when you go to market, or it might be seen on the shelves as something different. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're
Okay.
going to be what's called a brand house. So not a
Okay.
house of brands. We won't work. We actually, so we've hired Crew. Crew's one of the top marketing and brand development companies in Western Canada.
Okay.
And so we've hired them on to help us really identify who our consumer is, and which large categories are kind of ripe for disruption in terms of bringing a plant-based solution to market. So the company was started by Bill, Mike, and Tony, three individuals with combined 100 years of experience, or over 100 years of experience in ocean. Whether Mike worked for the government, and he was in the Navy. Bill worked for a technology company that was doing some oceanography work. And Tony worked for a company that basically is stabilizing wind farms and stabilizing platforms. So these three really understood the ocean. And it was Bill who saw an opportunity. And really, if you do a Google search about seaweed, one of the first things that'll come up is that the global demand for seaweed outstrips supply. And the majority of supply is coming from China and just off the coast of Japan. Okay. There's a little bit done in different places of the world, but when you talk about supply chains, almost 100% of the seaweed that you would see in market today is coming from Asia. Mm-hmm. And it may be processed here, but the actual seaweed is grown off the coast of several countries in Asia. Okay. And they saw an opportunity that, if they could commercially grow seaweed in the most pristine waters of probably the world, the Cascadia region mm-hmm. is one of the most pristine areas of the world to grow and cultivate seaweed. And the great thing again about seaweed is you grow it in the ocean. You don't need fresh water. And the variants that we're growing grow here naturally. So we're not bringing any invasive species into our waters. Mm. So they saw an opportunity, and so they formed a company called Cascadia Seaweed. They did a friends and family round. They raised about $500,000, and off to the races they went. And they actually started with 2 test crops. So they had to prove that they could grow this on a commercial scale, because it's one thing to go out in the ocean and kind of harvest it, close to shore, almost like a craft business. There is some there, and a lot of that kind of goes on, kind of in the Banfield area and different areas up and down the coast of BC and Alaska. People go out in the ocean, they collect it, they turn it into something, and off to the farmer's market they go. So they were attempting to do this at scale, and so I joined. So they've proven the test crops, and I've joined at the time where we are in the process of scaling up. And our first commercial crop will be 400 tons of 3 different variants of seaweed. We're going to be growing sugar kelp, alaria, and dulse. Wow. And very small quantity of dulse, but the majority will be sugar kelp and alaria. So we have partnered with First Nations and with coastal communities because it's the First Nations and the government that you have to work with to get the rights to grow the seaweed, and they will harvest it for us, and then we will do the primary processing, and then we'll turn it into a finished product.
And you were mentioning too in our pre-interview talk that how helpful that is to the Indigenous people, because that fishing is in decline, and who knows what's going to actually happen. Hey,
yeah, and again, long-winded answer, but it's why when Crew studied us, because Crew, before taking on the project, did a lot of work understanding who we were, and they came back with a phrase that we are truly good. And there's a lot of companies, and I've worked with companies that are feeding the world. I've worked for companies that are environmental. I've worked for companies that have helped communities in which they live in which they operate in. But at the end of the day, this is the first company that I've seen that really, and as we like to say, check all the boxes. Yeah. So whether it's First Nations relationships, helping coastal communities with jobs, whether it's helping the planet, seaweed is, I think seaweed, and I'm going to throw out a number, but don't quote me on this, but CO2 sequestration is the highest with seaweed. It captures a tremendous amount of the CO2 that we create in the world. So,
Oh, interesting.
and it also acts as a filter, and
Mm,
it acts as a fish habitat and sea wildlife habitat.
right.
So when you bring seaweed back to coastal communities and coastal waters, it has an amazing positive impact on the environment.
Mm.
And then on top of that, it has the human health aspect, which
Yeah, I
is
was going to ask you to talk about that a little bit more. I know, neither of us are nutritionists, but maybe you could say
right.
what's the nutritional value that you've learned about?
Yeah. So it's classified as a superfood, and
Yeah.
in terms of so it would fall into the plant-based nutrition category. And so in terms of its health benefits, it's first of all very high in dietary fiber,
Mm.
um, very high in B12, one of the only plant-based sources of B12.
Which
So
is
there's a
really interesting for vegetarians and vegans because they
you
are
got it.
typically low in B12. So that's
You
great.
got it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they have to take
Um,
supplements. So it's not readily available in very many foods. So
and
that's
not
good.
natural, right? When you
Yeah,
take it
not
as a
natural.
supplement,
Yeah.
it's not natural. So,
Yeah.
very high in again naturally occurring, I guess B12, and high in phosphates, high in iodine.
Mm,
It's considered low sodium, right? Because
right.
we're not going to be adding too much salt. It's low in
It's really,
calories.
it's tastes salty to begin
It
with, right?
it,
So
it
you don't need
already
to add it.
does.
Yeah. I've
You
actually
got
crunched it up and put it in a salad, like as
right.
sort of a crunchy topping to a salad because it does give, it's nice to have a little bit of a salty taste, and that's a good
Right
way to
on.
get it. Yeah.
And then high in omega-3 and omega
Hmm.
6. And
Wow.
so when we looked at different categories to go into, boy, it can go in so many categories. You could launch a personal care products.
Hmm.
It's amazing as an exfoliant. It's amazing as a hydration for skin. You could make a collagen out of it. Again, most collagen that people take usually comes from skin of the fish skin or fish scales.
Hmm.
Um, you could launch a collagen that would be plant-based. You could launch products, fresh salad. That's one of the products that we're thinking deeply and meaningful of going into that category, is because it's just it. We'd love to serve it to you in its most basic form,
Mm.
because we don't want to necessarily over process it.
Sure.
But we're also talking about like a nori sheet. You've seen those nori sheets. They're those flat sheets. A lot of the kids eat them, right?
It's funny, you know what? It's almost the only seaweed product that I'm aware of.
Right. And
When I go and eat sushi or
right on.
or like I say, I bought some the other day and just as a snack, really. Yeah, it's the only product that I'm really aware of. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so we're thinking of that, but more like a chip, right? Again, you know what
yeah.
we've done some research. The North American palate, they like that chip.
It,
That's
it'd
where
be a
it's
great chip. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and we're also looking very, again, deeply and meaningful into the jerky category.
Hmm,
So right now, most people who hike and bike and paddle and the very busy on the go, a lot of them are eating a meat-based protein
right.
jerky.
Yeah.
And we think we can come into that market and be very disruptive and give the people who want to be, whether it's a flexitarian or
Hmm,
an actual vegan, we
sure.
want to give them an option. When you're going up the Coquitlam Crunch, and instead of taking your meat jerky, you'll be able to take a plant-based jerky
Yeah.
that, first of all, tastes great, right? Like,
Right.
um, we're really, again, focusing on making sure that whatever we bring to market first tastes great,
Hmm.
then has the right mouth feel,
Hmm.
and has all of the product attributes that I talked about, all the nutritional benefits.
Hmm.
So those are like the top three things that we're thinking about in
Cool.
all and that's Desiree and myself. So you talked about Desiree, and
Right.
yeah, you know what? So when I joined, I said we needed somebody who kind of could represent the brand, someone that really, from the way they live their life, their core values, their image out there in the public. We wanted someone, or I wanted to bring someone in who could do that. And a couple different names came up, and I was talking to my wife, and my wife spent some years in consumer research, and she knows my wife was chair of the board for Reuben Shoes for a short period of time. And I know Desiree as well. For the last 10 years, I've known her. And, my wife said, you should really think about Desiree. And I was like, man, why didn't I think of that? That's a no-brainer. And
Yeah.
so we brought Desiree in as a partner. And
Great.
so she is also a partner in the business. And she's head of sales and marketing and brand development.
Excellent. Yeah, she'll be great at that. And like you say, she walks the talk.
She sure does.
She's a committed vegetarian for sure, or vegan. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always get those two terms mixed up a little bit.
Yeah, and you know what? It's why, again, people say, is it a vegan product? We're really trying to focus again on that plant-based.
Yes, I love the
Yeah.
term plant-based too.
Yeah.
I mean, I made the switch myself,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't say I'm vegan. I would say I'd rather say I'm a plant-based eater, whole food plant-based.
Right on. Yeah, and
consumer.
me
Yeah.
myself, I would say, again, I'm a flexitarian, right? Again,
Yeah.
and even as a company, we may come out with a a flexitarian salmon burger, like
Sure.
a 50-50, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I just had one question pop up, and I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, but historically, what were some indigenous uses for seaweed? Are you aware of how they
Yeah. So,
used it?
I mean, I don't know all of the different uses, but I will say there. In fact, we found there's like a 400-year-old Coast Salish saying
Mm.
that when the ocean is out, the table is set.
Yeah.
And it's true, right? So
Yeah.
it has been in diets. I mean, I think going back 1,000 years,
Yeah.
and it's not just Asian diets.
Mhm.
It's also First Nations diets.
Sure.
They have been growing it. So I definitely know it's in there. It's in there. It was in their diets and
Yeah.
continues to be in their diets.
Mm.
And I don't know about medicinal in terms was it used for medicinal purposes? But again, just
So
the
good
fact
for
that,
you anyways. It
yeah,
was
just eating it raw.
Yeah.
I always joke to people, that there's those shows where they drop you in the wild and
Yeah.
see if you live.
Oh yeah.
I always find it's interesting, right? You always see them hunting, trying to
Yeah.
like kill squirrels and
Yeah.
catch snakes, but you never just see them go down to the water and grab some seaweed and eat it.
Yeah, right.
And if you simply did that, you'd stay alive for forever out there.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because in those shows they typically are starving. It's food. It's food
Yeah.
that gets them.
Yeah, that's what they always tap out because they're starving to death.
Yeah. Or if they're on the West Coast, it's
Yeah,
cold
yeah.
and wet and
Yeah.
all the rest of it as well. Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's neat. As you're mentioning, it just sounds like there's so many opportunities. How do you decide as a company where to start?
So we're really focused again. So we did a strategic plan. I took the company through a strategic
Right.
planning process
Yeah.
and launching brands into the consumer products industry is first and foremost.
Yeah.
And we've narrowed it down with the help of Crew to really 3 categories, right? So you will see something in the plant-based jerky. You will
Okay.
see something in the what I'll call snacking area, the seaweed chip,
Mm-hmm.
and you probably will see something quite fast on the heels of that in a fresh seaweed salad.
Okay.
What's interesting about the seaweed salads is we're not just thinking about seaweed salad. So we're thinking about what we're calling yoga bowls. So we'll have one product that is a base seaweed salad, but we're also thinking about combination salads. So we might have a vegan poke bowl salad that has seaweed in it, but it'll also have plant-based salmon, made from tomatoes. And so we're really, really trying to focus on that very busy, our kind of core consumer is that on the go, very busy, I'll say mother with a family at home.
Hmm.
She wants to make sure they eat nutritious,
Hmm.
and she needs to eat nutritious as well, right?
Right.
And so if they're in the office and they're hungry for lunch, they could
Hmm.
go down to their grocery store that's at the bottom of their tower, and they'll be able to go to the ready to eat section of that grocery store
Hmm.
and pick up a salad, take it back to the office, and get all of their nutritional benefits plus a great tasting product.
Cool. I wonder, like, I've been involved in projects like this before where you have to um, educate the public a little bit. Have you guys talked about that? Like, not everybody, I think probably people have they think about their sushi wrapped in seaweed, and that's about it, like, um, yeah, how do you do that when you're introducing a product like this? Have you guys just,
Yeah,
has that an issue for you at all?
great question.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we see it as an opportunity in terms of the industry itself. It didn't take me long to realize, and even when I was working for a dietary supplement company, seaweed was starting to get talked about as another protein. So you
Mhm.
have like pea protein and brown rice protein and soy protein,
Yeah.
and seaweed was starting to emerge that you could take a dulse, you could dry it, you could turn it into a powder, and that powder could be added to a dietary supplement for the protein kick that you get.
Hmm.
And so the industry is emerging, which is good. Kind of rising tide raises all boats.
Right.
Um, the fact that the West Coast has a very large Asian influence.
Sure.
Also, the West Coast is very open to seaweed products,
Yeah.
and we will also be doing a lot of educating. So yeah, no doubt about it. The good thing is someone like yourself, for example, you're open to plant-based offerings,
Hmm.
right? So what we need to do is make sure that when you're in front of that jerky aisle,
Hmm.
you walk into Mountain Equipment Co-op, and you're about to go on a 5K hike tomorrow or a 10K hike,
Yeah.
and you buy your jerky product. We have to make sure that we're front and center, and make sure that we present it in a way that you very quickly understand when you're making that 3 foot decision, the
Mhm.
length of your arm, that that uh, that we present it in a way that you're like, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm.
It's a plant-based offering, which is what I'm looking for,
Yeah.
but it packs all the punch of
Hmm.
the meat protein based offering,
Yeah.
and even additional benefits, right?
Right.
So I think we will be successful, but I think it will take time. We're not fooling ourselves. We're not our business plan doesn't say we're going to be $1 billion in the next 3 years.
Hmm.
I think it's meaningful growth. Year one, we're kind of starting in British Columbia. Kind of year two, we'll expand more across Canada,
Yeah.
and then kind of year two and three, we'll go down the I-5 corridor, and make sure that we have a U.S. presence, because the west coast of the U.S. very open to seaweed-based products.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Yeah. So it's kind of a new and expanding market. I mean, it's not really new,
Right.
but maybe finding it in North American stores, it's new, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it will go fast. I mean, like pea protein, 5 years ago, not many people heard about pea protein
Yeah.
in their products.
Yeah.
Now, kind of everything you're eating, whether it's Impossible Foods or these other great companies, a lot of them have found a way to extrude pea protein and turn it into kind of like a meat analog,
Yeah.
and just done such a great job. And so we're kind of we're fast following, so to speak, with a different, more novel protein.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like I think there's also a trend towards people eating a more plant-based diet, and like you say, seaweed it sounds like it's superfood. It ticks off so many boxes in terms
Yeah.
of what people are looking for, omega-3s
Yeah.
and all the rest. Yeah.
I mean, we're heavy users of the fast food chains in Coquitlam,
Yeah.
and my daughter started. My youngest daughter started asking for the Beyond Meat or the plant-based patty option that they
Yeah.
have, and she loves it. Tastes great, and she doesn't even think twice. I mean, she orders it as her burger of choice. And so, like you said, there's so many people that are starting off in the plant-based market
Yeah.
versus having to adapt to it.
Yeah. So personally, what really excites you about this? I mean, you seem to have a real business mind. Is it the business side that excites you, or what really excites you about this company?
Yeah, so much. Again, I mean, it started for me. It started with I wasn't looking for another job,
Yeah.
and again, I'm just so fortunate, working for the companies I've worked for, and just got to a point in life where things were good, and and
Hmm.
and so I wasn't looking for a job, but what excites me is, you know, this is a company I want to help get there, right? I've helped a lot of businesses grow. I've helped a lot of businesses be successful.
Yeah.
Fortunately, some of those businesses have been mine, and other times I've been just an employee.
Hmm.
And this one is doing so much good. I mean, you understand very well the cod fishery collapsing all those years ago in Eastern Canada,
Hmm.
and the damage that did to the coastal communities
Yeah.
in PEI or Newfoundland. We have the same types of things going on now on the West Coast.
Hmm.
Is with the salmon fishery, with all of the issues, these coastal communities are under a tremendous amount of pressure. And and the last thing I'd want is, people who are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s to have to leave their community and go work, let's say, wherever in the oil sands, and they have to leave their families. They only come home every, 6 months or 9 months, and that's not a life, right?
Hmm.
That's an existence. It's not a life. So I think the thing that most excites me about this is creating jobs in coastal communities
Hmm.
with First Nations partnership.
Yeah.
Just so, like, it's just so incredible. It gives me, I got goosebumps. Like, it
Yeah.
um like, I just so proud of that. Like, boy, you want to talk about stroking your ego. I mean, it's
Yeah.
I have an ego just like everybody else, and
Yeah.
some people say a very large one. And this just does that, and
Yeah.
just so exciting.
Great. Good. Well, man, it's exciting. It is exciting. It sounds like it ticks off so many boxes, I think, that people are all about these days. It's like you say, it's having an economic impact. It's good for the environment. It's great for your health. And then it sounds like you have some really good people on board, like a really great team that you've put together. So
I
yeah,
really, what? Thank you for saying that, because
yeah.
sometimes I maybe appear like I'm the guy. And um,
Well, it sounds like
one
it's a
thing
good
that,
fit for you too, with
yeah,
your experience. I mean, it
yeah.
sounds like they're lucky to have you. So yeah.
Well, I mean, we've been out there doing another financial raise of some capital, and
Yeah,
one thing that's coming back loud and clear why people are investing
yeah,
is they're investing in the people. And
yeah.
and my wife always says, Benita always reminds me, and I often forget. She always, one of her sayings is, you know, opportunities are attached to people,
Hmm.
not to things.
Right,
And I sometimes forget that. I
right.
see, oh, there's a seaweed company.
Yeah,
No, it's the people in the company
right.
that are gonna make it great, right?
Yeah. Because you could have all of those things that I just mentioned and not have the people to execute it, and
Yeah,
it's not going to happen.
yeah.
But
Thank you for leading me down that path, Rod. I appreciate it.
you're welcome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you want to mention?
No, that's great. Thank you so
Okay.
much for your time. That's you gave me a lot of time, and just really appreciate you and your organization for letting us tell our story.
Oh, thanks.